Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my network. So these are great leads that I'll be interviewing to get to those books that have made the most contribution, the biggest impact on my guest's life, work, business, whatever it may be. All those worlds intersect. So I want to get to that book that really stands out the most for them. And my guest today is Matt Rogers. And Matt is a college recruiting advisor and motivational speaker, mentoring student athletes and families on how to maximize their college recruiting journeys. Coach Matt has helped over 4,000 families with their journeys to play college sports. He also does that in a number of different platforms. As an author, writing the 5-star reviewed book, Significant Recruiting, the Playbook for Prospective College Athletes, which is a step-by-step guide to maximizing student-athlete exposure to college coaches at colleges and universities throughout the United States. By publishing the Recruits Journal, a series that are companion workbooks for families going through the college recruiting journey. As a university athletics consultant, training college coaches and athletic directors on recruiting, team building, and program development. As a podcast host, he interviews high school, college, and professional coaches and athletes in his weekly podcast, Significant Coaching and Recruiting with Matt Rogers. And as a blogger, writing weekly essays entitled The Blog of Significance to help guide coaches, parents, and student athletes through their academic and athletic journeys. And you can learn more about Matt at CoachMattRogers.com. And Coach Matt lives in the Denver, Colorado area with his wife of 27 years, Karen, and their 2 children, Kaia and Kade. And I was introduced to Matt by Kat Margulis, who was my guest on this podcast in episode 141, came out June of this year. And we covered Kat's book in that episode, Again, Only More Like You. After we were done with that conversation, Kat said she had somebody she wanted me to talk to. That's always a great compliment to me when somebody that I have on trusts me with their network, puts me in touch with somebody that has a great story, great background, great experiences, all of it. So she connected me and Matt, and we got to know each other, got to know each other's work a little bit, and here we are for this conversation. So Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Matt, so read the bio. Love it. It's a lot of great information, a lot of great assistance for families. I love the fact that it's great information and assistance to the athlete, to the family. And then on the flip side, to the universities, the colleges, the staff that obviously receive and work with those athletes. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are today, the day-to-day, what that looks like? Obviously, again, spread across all these platforms. How is it you make that work? What does that look like?
That is a good question. I hear you read my bio and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
go ahead. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot, but I'm having a blast. I seem to have my fingers in so many holes at so many different places, and I'm just enjoying them all. I was a college coach for a long time, so when I got out of coaching to raise my kids, I needed a venue and a platform to keep putting my passion out there and keep being around kids and keep coaching. And I sat down and wrote a book, and I wouldn't have written it without Kat, who you graciously talked about. Kat was an unbelievable editor for me and book coach. And, we wrote this book together, and I'm really thankful for it. And it's opened up so many doors for me. The consulting, the working with families, the speaking. I'm writing more books. I've just put out a 5-book journal series to a companion book with my first book, and I've got children books coming out for the holidays. And but really, where my next probably 6 months are going to be is I'm building an athletic department for a small college out west that has got a great history and a beautiful campus, and they want to start athletics. So I'm going to go in and consult, and we're going to build an athletic department for them so they can start bringing athletes in and student athletes in. And so I'm really excited about that. So yeah, it's a lot, to say the least.
Incredible. But I even want to know what that even looks like, how you balance those things. Like, give me, if you could, just even a general rundown of what a week would look like, because you have kids too, you have family commitments.
Yeah.
So you're podcasting, you're blogging, you're writing books, you're consulting. Give me a little more on that. I want a little more on how it is you make all that fit in. And I get it when it's something that you're passionate about and you love. it sounds so cliche, but it is true. If it's something that you love that much, you just get energized by it. But how do you make all that work?
My wife would tell you I don't. Uh, uh, but I'm getting better at putting things into compartments. And so I know what my Monday's going to look like from 8 to noon. As soon as I drop the kids off, I know you dropped your kids off today. I pretty much know what 8 to noon is going to look like Monday through Friday. And I'm hammering things out. When you're working with student athletes like them and families a lot, they really can't work with me until they get home from work and school. So that 3 to 6 is really for them. And then 8 to 10 when they need me a little bit later. I've got families in Hawaii. I've got families in North Carolina that I work with. So it's really boxing the things that I know I've got to get done from 8 to 12 those days. I was never a big person on social media. I never cared for it, never thought it was value, but now I'm doing so much on social media that's probably an hour every day of just getting in, especially with the books and the book series. I do so much on Facebook. I do so much with Facebook groups and parent groups. So, and then I try and have my afternoons free to do things like a podcast and do my podcast editing and things like that, and find time I go to the library. I'm a library geek. I go to the library and write, and I try and block out a couple hours a week just to go to the library and write, not only my blog, but the new books I'm working on. And I've got, what's crazy is you look at my files and I have 12 books I've already outlined that I'm planning on writing in the next, it's going to take me 100 years, but I want to listen to those things. So again, I'm not very good at it, but I'm starting to put things in boxes.
So then obviously another question that I have is, being a student athlete yourself, how does that work out with your kids and the time that you make for them? How do you make that work out?
Yeah, well, I've got a 12 and a 16-year-old now. So the 16-year-old is driving and has a job. So what I try and do with her, she's a golfer. We try and get on the golf course at least once a week, where we just block out a 3-hour window where school's out. She gets home, she hops in a car, and we go to the golf course and play 9 holes of golf. And that's really becoming our time together, because she's so busy and she's a teenager. So 1,000 friends. And then it's really important in our family that we eat together. Dinners are pretty much no questions about it. We eat together. At least Monday through Friday. Saturdays and Sundays, it's a little more fluid, but playing golf, eating dinner, talking about homework, talking about the day of school, that's really where we're finding our family time. And then we try and do something fun once a month together, where we'll go for a short trip somewhere, or go to a show, or go to a ball game, something like that.
All right, Matt, to understand how you ended up here, can you give me a walkthrough of your career, your journey to now? Typically, I like to start maybe around high school age or when somebody enters the workforce. What did your path to now, to what you're doing now, what did that look like? What was that?
It probably started well before high school. I was an uncle at 7. I have older siblings. They're all 10 to 15 years older than me. So my sister had a baby when I was 7, and I was Uncle Matt.
That's so funny.
It is. And that little girl changed my life. She's 42 years old now, almost 43 years old. And she's got her own kids, great kids. And I think there's something clicked in my brain. I don't know if it was always there, but I loved coaching and teaching. So by the time I got to, I was a 5th grader, and the teachers and the principals would ask me to work with the kindergartners. And then that continued into middle school. And in high school, I got into something where somebody asked me to come over and come over to the elementary school twice a week and work with kids during my off period, and work with the kindergartners. And I just fell in love with teaching. I fell in love with coaching. And by the time I was 16, I was on a field coaching. I was coaching a t-ball team at 16. I was coaching a middle school team at 18. And I was a college coach at 22. And I was a head college coach at 26. So it's just always been in my blood to coach. And I did that for a long, long time. And then in 2013, my wife got pregnant and we had a baby, our second child, right in the middle of my college season. And we were living in California. We didn't have any family there, and trying to raise two kids while I was coaching, my wife was traveling. Something had to stop. And since my wife was the breadwinner, college coaches don't make a lot of money unless you coach at Kentucky or UCLA. I got out of coaching to raise the kids and kind of be a stay-at-home dad. And that led to a couple of friends of mine were scouting and evaluating talent for college coaches. They said, would you like to come do some scouting with us? And I said, that sounds great. Can I do it after 4:00 when my wife is done? And they said, yes. So I did that for about 10 years. And that really ended up helping 4,000 kids get to college and evaluating and helping college coaches get those kids to the right schools. And I learned a ton. And that's when the book happened, where I was like, I need to download my brain. I have too much information and I need to share it to help all these families. And that's where I am today. That's kind of what created this world I'm in.
What'd you go to school for?
I went to school to be a doctor, like a lot of kids. And freshman year, college biology knocked me on my tail and realized that I wasn't going to be a doctor. And so I went back to my roots. I was really good at English and won a couple of awards as an English student in high school. So I decided to major in English because I loved reading and writing, and then got my secondary education degree so I could coach and teach.
Matt, does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing? Obviously, from what I hear, to me, it's like, yeah, it does. But I always like to ask somebody that pointed question, does it make sense to you? Just so I can hear in their words how they reconcile who they were as a kid to who they are now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I grew up in such a small town. My parents didn't go to college. So much of the world we didn't understand, so much of the world I didn't understand. So I think if I could go back and talk to that young man at 14, 15, I'd probably get him on the same track I'm on, but maybe a little different. I wouldn't mind being the general manager of the Chicago Cubs. I wouldn't mind, being still coaching at the college level or being an athletic director, but I probably would have ended up here somewhere or another. What I really love about some of the turns I had to make is it brought me back to writing 30 years after I started as an English major and an English teacher. So I love the fact that writing has become such a central part of my life. I wish I would have done it more 25, 30 years ago. I wish I would have really wrote it harder, but now I'm really enjoying the writing every week. I write a blog every week, and it's significant. I sit down and I put a lot of thought into it. I want it to be valuable to whoever's reading it. And I enjoy it. I just love writing, so I can't get enough of it.
What did you want when you were a kid and you became an English major? What were you thinking for your future? Was there like a certain particular area you wanted to go in writing? What were your thoughts at that point?
I didn't know what was out there, so the idea of journalism was pretty cool to me. The idea of writing for a magazine or writing for a newspaper, being a beat writer, following a college team or a professional team. Those things were kind of cool, but I didn't know how to go after those things. And so, yeah, I always wanted to play second base for the Cubs or point guard for the Bulls, but I knew pretty quickly with my short arms and small hands that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I think for me, there's something about telling the story about something that made me excited. A game, a situation with politics where, gosh, I want to write about this. I want to explain it. I want to get into the roots of it a little bit more. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it is finding the reality in it, finding the significance in a story.
Where do you think that comes from in you?
Again, I think it goes back to being a small town kid and being raised a certain way, not a wrong way, but a way that it took me I was really naive, 18, 19, 20-year-old. And once I got into the world, I realized, wow, there's a lot more ways to think than what I was taught to think. And that opened the floodgates. I mean, I took an Eastern religion class at 19.
When you left your small town, where did you go? Where did this happen?
I went to the school that I told myself I would never go to. It was the last school on my list is where I ended up, and that was College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, COE. It's a little private school in the middle of Iowa. And the reason I didn't want to go there is that's where my brother and sister went. They both got their degrees there. And I was like, I've been Timmy's little brother and Bethy's little brother for way too long. I am not putting myself back in that situation.
Yeah.
And so this is how crazy I was at 18. I had a scholarship to go to Marquette University to be an architect. I was going to major in architecture as well, And so this is the 18-year-old brains that I now deal with for a living. And I have to go back 30 some years and remind myself what I was like. And a college coach called me in February of my senior year after I'd basically already committed to Marquette to go be a student. And he said, we really like you. We want you to come play point guard for us. And I was like, oh my God, I get to keep playing basketball. So I dropped that and went and visited College and I fell in love with it. It was home within an hour that I knew I belonged there, and I had a blast. I had a great 4 years.
So now you mentioned architecture. So now I got to ask about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Where did that come in? What your interest in that? Like what? And I'm not judging at all. I love the fact that it's like sports and creative and like, where does that come from? Where does that come from? When did you maybe get the itch or interest in architecture?
Well, it's funny, most stories, like my niece and my older sister, most stories come back to my older siblings. They were my heroes. They, everything they did, I wanted to do. My brother Bob studied architecture, was an architectural engineer, and he would bring home these blueprints of these cities that he designed with the down to the detail of the trees and the shadows and how he wrote in capital letters. And I was just like, oh, that is so cool. It spoke to my soul. So for me, I was like, okay, Bobby did this. I love this. I'm going to go do what Bobby did. And, I was 18. I didn't put any more thought into it than that. It was like, okay, I got really good grades. I was great at math. My test scores in math were through the roof. It made sense. Made sense for everybody to push me to engineering, where I just won this award for English. I was the top English student in my high school and won all this award for writing. But because my math scores were so good, my guidance counselor and everybody said, oh, go a science route, go an engineering route. So that's where my head was. And that's probably why most kids change their major at least 7 times from the time they're 18 to 22. I was a perfect example of that.
Matt, what do you consider your superpower?
Empathy. It's my superpower and my kryptonite all in the same one. I feel the world. I feel when people are in pain, when people are joy. I feel it. I absorb it like a sponge. And it's probably the reason so many families hire me to work with their son or daughter, because I can relate to them really quickly and I can care about them really, really quickly and love them and be really honest with them and expect them to be honest back. But it also can affect, my emotions and how I react. And I'm in my 50s now, and I'm finally learning how to kind of connect to those emotions in a healthy way. And it made me a really good coach, but at times it made me a really bad coach. So yeah, empathy's probably my superhero, if I have one.
So for you, when was the turning point where you started learning about it and kind of harnessing it? It's incredible how we can really tap into and understand ourselves in our, late 40s, 50s, that, you think you might have everything figured out when you're younger. You're like, oh, I'll have it figured out by my mid 20s or 30s. and we're still learning. So for you, when did learning about your empathy as a strength, as well as a, whatever we want to call it, or a weakness or a blind side, whatever it may be, for you, when did you start seeing that and what it meant for you?
Most coaches will tell you a story like this, but it was at 16, the first time I was responsible for a group of kids on a field or in a gym where I was coaching them and leading them. It's when you teach a kid something, or you motivate them, or you give them the confidence to be something they're afraid to be, and you teach them something, and you can see it in their eyes that the light bulb just went on. And then they execute what you've taught them, and it leads to success. And they're able to go, wow, that worked. Look what I did. Yeah. That's really when that happened for me. And it was like, I can't get enough of that. Give me more of that. Give me another one to teach. Give me somebody else to motivate. Give me somebody else to inspire. Line them up. I'm ready. That's really where it began for me.
Yeah, the incredible part of that, whether you're coaching younger people, whether you're teaching, what's incredible, what I've learned, and I haven't had as many experiences as you, a lot as a coach, but not coaching various sports across the years and whatnot. But the biggest thing I've learned, the biggest surprise that I encountered, was just how much of a difference you can make with just the smallest gesture, the smallest question, the smallest comment. That's what blew me away. So for me, it got in my mind, as a society, it's like we can empower kids so much just by looking them in the eye, telling them, I see you, I acknowledge what you're doing. Here's how we can do it differently, and let's see what happens. But what blew my mind away in coaching or teaching of any kind was just how much of a difference you can make in someone's life. Because when they leave you, that same kind of effervescence, if you will, stays with them. It's like, what else can I learn? What else they get into that mindset. So
yes,
I have such a deep appreciation for teaching and coaching because of that. Just the ROI on just the impact you can make, the gesture you give to somebody, the question, the acknowledgement, the ROI is just, the ripple effect of that is incredible.
It's so funny. I'll tell you a quick story. I've been doing car parking, or the car line at my son's work, or my son's school. I do it twice a week. And my job is to get the kids out of the car, get their backpacks on, and get them moving towards the door as fast as I can, because we have so many cars coming through. And I give them all high fives. They walk by me. I put my hand up and go, how high can you get it? And I got kids that are half asleep, and they're frowning, and they're, maybe even a little tear in their eye because school just started. Some of them just aren't ready to disconnect from their parents. And I've been doing this for 2 weeks, and I'm only there twice a week. And I got kids getting out of the car now, trying to make eye contact with me, and they're running at me with this huge smile on their face just because they want to give me a high five.
Yeah.
So for me, it's only 30 minutes or twice a week, but that joy that I get is greater than the joy they get. And I can see in their eyes that they're just excited that somebody's going, how are you today? Go learn something today. Go make a new friend, And so that's the centerpiece of my soul. That's who I am. If I can make somebody happy, especially a kid, because I know how much depression is out there. I know how much anxiety and a lack of self-esteem and a lack of self-worth. And if I can get one of those kids to maybe look at themselves a little differently and see that somebody believes in them and somebody cares about them, gosh, there's not a better job in the world.
Amen. Matt, for you, what does leadership mean to you? How would you describe it? What does great leadership look like? Before we jump into the book, I got to get to that question.
Yeah, I'll give you a good transition into the book. And it's actually the first chapter, the intro of the book as well. I was 23 years old, and I was the community development coordinator at St. Louis U. It was my first job out of college. Community development coordinator. Basically, I was in charge of about 500 college kids in the residence hall system, highfalutin residence director. And like most colleges, they had speakers that came in all the time. We had like this monthly speaker series. and they brought in this great speaker, and I was in an auditorium and I was real busy. So I was like, gosh, I really don't want to be here, but my bosses wanted me to be there. And this unbelievable woman got to the stage and she said, I want you all to remove the word success from your vocabulary right now. And I want you to replace it with significance. And I don't know why that affected me so much, but the more she talked about it, the more I was like, that's how I'm going to coach. That's how I'm going to lead. Because success, and I'm an old basketball coach, so I use this as a metaphor. Anybody can walk into a gym, even if you've never seen a basketball in your life. I can take you into a gym, give you a basketball, and after 5, 10 attempts, you're going to throw that ball high enough and it's going to go through the hoop. Significance in terms of leadership and learning and teaching is about teaching them how to do it the right way so they can repeat it and grow from it and find their instincts from it where they go, gosh, I think I can do this a different way. I think I can do this a better way. And I think that goes back to that desire to be an engineer and taking parts and seeing if I can make something better and make something work better. I think there's some similarities there, but leadership for me is teaching people how to be significant in their lives, teaching them how to be significant with their craft, not relying on something that's always been there, not allowing status quo to run their life. So I think that's a huge part of my leadership and how I've developed as a leader.
I wonder how different you would have been if you weren't an uncle at that young age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all these lessons you're sharing, all the empathy that you exercise, seeing somebody, helping somebody. Because I mean, think about it. You becoming an uncle at 7 and you're in your formative years looking out for somebody. It's one thing if you have younger siblings, but you're all going to beat the shit out of each other. It's a little different when it's somebody you have to return to the mom or whoever it may be. But obviously there's no answer for that. We can't know, but I would love to see the alternate timeline where Matt was not an uncle until later in his teen years or in his 20s, because I think just being in that constant mindset of looking out for somebody like that kind of sets the tone for everything that ripples out from there.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife and I were at a restaurant, our kids were at sleepovers, and we rarely get a night out by ourselves. So we went to a restaurant the other night, and there was this big family across the way from us. And I was thinking about, we just talked about, there was a mom with 2 little kids. One was an infant and one was a 3-year-old that was running everywhere. And that mom kept getting up. She must have gotten up 25 times to chase the little one, to wipe a face, to pick something off the floor. And the dad's there the whole time, just talking to the other dad. I think he got up from his chair once to help. And that's after the 3-year-old ran clear across the other side of the restaurant. He goes, oh, I'll get her. The mom's got the baby in her hands. And I was like, what am I doing for my son? Because he didn't have that. He wasn't changing diapers at 7. He wasn't babysitting at 10.
Yeah.
He wasn't having to learn how to take a crying baby and get them calm and get them to relax and get a 2-year-old into the bed. I was doing that at 10, 11, and 12. I had 14 nieces and nephews by the time I was 17. So I was taking care of everything. I could be a dad, I could be a mom. And I was thinking that while I was sitting there, I was thinking, what am I doing for my son to prepare him, not so much to be a dad, but to be somebody that understands childhood and taking care of little ones and that empathy. And he's got that. He's a real sensitive kid, but he's not going to have those experiences. He's probably going to be 18 years old and probably will never hold a baby, unless, we're with some cousins and, that have had children. So I worry about that because I see too many men in our country that don't have that skill. No, they don't make dinner. They don't do the laundry. They might mow the lawn and take care of the car and, open up a jar that can't be open, all those manly things that we do. But
yeah,
there's too many men that don't know how to do those little things that are so significant, so valuable. And I worry about that. I worry about our boys
Yeah.
and learning how to be a parent and be a human being and being a good man.
Yeah, that's come up on here. It's come up in like, the usual, not the usual conversations, but regular conversations I hear on podcasts. You're reading more and more articles about, how boys are being raised, how men are feeling today, because the roles are changing. The roles in societies are changing. There are no traditional roles. So it's
Right.
interesting to see what the options are for how we teach our boys how to be men and what that means and that evolving definition of what it may mean. Not letting go of like the traditional sense of protector and whatever that may be, but
Right.
also because it's evolving, supplementing that with that softer side, if you will. But thank you for sharing that story. I think it brings up a good question of how we can do the best that we can with our kids. We're not going to nail it. We're not going to get it perfect, but how can we steer them in that right direction of being well-rounded for everyone in their life?
That's right.
All right, Matt, let's jump in your book. If you could, why don't you introduce the book one more time, the title and how it came to be? I mean, we have a general sense, but when
Yeah.
did that actually come into play that you're like, all right, I got to get this going?
Yeah. It's called Significant Recruiting. It's the Playbook for Prospective College Athletes. It's a really long title and an underscore title. And, uh, it when you're meeting with so many families like I was meeting with sometimes 40 families a week. And my job as a scout and a talent evaluator and basically a highfalutin college recruit advisor. And over almost a 10 year time span, I helped 4,000 families with their journey to college. And I was overwhelmed. I mean, I talked about my empathy being my kryptonite as well. When you're dealing with that many dads and that many moms and that many kids every week, uh, there's so many things that were just, uh, my soul was so heavy every day. Can't tell you how many kids I met with where the mom was making $8 an hour trying to raise two kids by herself, or they were homeless. We have a kid that's playing in the NFL right now that I worked with that they had to go to McDonald's and borrow a computer just to get on the internet to meet with me because they didn't have a computer of their own and they were living out of their car. And that kid's now playing in the NFL. It's crazy what I had to deal with.
Matt, jumping in real quick, just because you've painted a picture for what the gravity of that experience would be for you or has been for
Yeah.
you. How do you, and not to take away from their experiences at all, but how do you take care of yourself? How do you manage to go through that, to cope with that? Because that is a lot to get that much exposure to people of various different backgrounds, things we may not see in our own lives. So how do you cope with that? How do you work through that?
Well, it's a great transition to the book. It wasn't. I was 30 pounds heavier. I was eating terribly. I'd be so emotionally wrecked at the end of a night that I would eat a pint of ice cream. I'd eat a bowl of cereal just to feed whatever that was going on in my brain. And I had to get out of it. I had to do something different. But I had all this information. I loved what I was doing. I loved the impact that I was having. And that's when I found Kat. And I told her in our first conversation, I said, Kat, I've written this first chapter of a book I want to write. I've written it about 35 times. I'll write it and I'll throw it out the door. And the first thing Kat told me, and that's why she's so wonderful, she goes, stop it. No more editing, no more rewriting. I just want you to write. I don't want you to even read what you write. I just want you to sit down and write. And somehow that unlocked my brain. And I went to my wife and I said, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to write this book. And we'd saved enough money that I was like, give me 3 months. Give me 3 months just to get this thing off the ground. I'm going to start working with kids on my own. I'm going to do it at a pace that's healthy. Instead of working with 40 kids a week, I'm going to work with 1 or 2 a month, and
The 40 kids a week, was that for one school? Who was your employer at that time?
my employer was NCSA.
Okay.
I think they're called Next College Student Athlete at the time. So all these families would come to them saying, we need help with recruiting. And they would send families to me every day. I mean, they would ask me for more and more. I mean, they would fill my calendar from 4 p.m. to 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Saturday and Sunday if I would have let them. That's how many families were looking for help. So that's why I had to put the brakes on and just say, I got to get off this train. The money was better than anything I'd ever made. I was making great money, but I was losing myself in the meantime.
Yeah.
So that's why I went to my wife and just said, I was in tears. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm killing myself. And so I hired Kat. I quit my job. I went to the library every day and I wrote. And I wrote 4,000 words on average for 12 straight days. By the end of those 12 days, I had my book. And I don't think it's the healthy way to write a book, but it was like a waterfall was flowing out of me. I would write from about 8 a.m. till 12, 1 o'clock. I wouldn't breathe. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't go to the bathroom. I would just write. And it wasn't like I was forcing myself. I knew what I wanted my chapters to look like. And for the first time, Kat had unleashed me, untethered me to just write. And I did. And then we spent the next 2 months editing it. I would send her a chapter every day and she'd edit it and we work on it. And so I went from, I think April 15th is when I started writing and we published on September 1st.
Wow.
It was a crazy, crazy way to do it, but there's no way I could have done it without Kat. There's no way I could have done it that fast and that well, because the book is really, really tight. She took my words and said, hey, you got to get rid of this section and you got to replace it. Give me something to replace it with. Or, hey, I really like this. I think this needs to be in your intro, or this, you need to remember you talked about this in chapter 2. You need to bring that back in chapter 10 and talk about why you talked about it in chapter 2. So Kat was just so good. Kat was my chat GPT. She polished everything. She helped me organize everything. And it really allowed me to be a creative. And that's what was so cool about the book, is that it's so much from my heart. It's so much from 25 years of coaching and working with families and understanding how recruiting works and understanding all the things that my parents didn't understand when I was 16, 17, and saying, okay, I'm going to teach kids and moms and dads how to do this the right way so they don't have to be scared. They don't have to think they're not good enough. They don't have to worry that they have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do this right. You know, my book for $20 will walk you through every step with stories, with advice from college coaches. So I'm really proud of that there's a product out there that a family can go to and go, wow, we can just read this. I had a mom just send me on social media a picture of her and her kids sitting down reading this book together. She goes, Matt, we're doing exactly what you told us. We're reading a chapter together every night because it's 12, 14 pages. We're reading a chapter together, and then we're doing the action list you give them. I give everybody 3 actions to do at the end of every chapter. And she goes, it's awesome. My kids are already talking to coaches and we're on chapter 7, you know. So it's really cool. I'm really proud of it.
And it does make sense to me to think about you in the library, just typing away feverishly, not taking a break, none of that, because the alternative was working yourself to death, going home, eating that pint of ice cream. So it's like all that, it's almost like all that energy was in you, didn't have anywhere to go. So it's kind of like you had to feed that energy. And then you get to that point where you have that freedom to write. And it's just kind of, like you said, I truly do picture you just kind of like a zombie, like all this information stored, like you said, for so many years. It makes sense that it was all there. I mean, I can only imagine all that history, all those interactions, all those stories, all those results of varying levels, right? All of that, holding on to that for so long is just it obviously can break somebody if they don't take care of themselves.
I was definitely on that path. I wasn't diagnosed as being depressed, but I know I was, and I know I was hurting in a lot of different ways. And I didn't like the person I was seeing in the mirror, and I knew I could be better. And I've so much enjoyed these last 3 years because I'm healthier. I go to the gym 3 days a week and I eat better. My kids are happier. They're healthier. My relationship with everybody's healthier. So yeah, I don't know if writing's the answer for everybody, but man, I teach it. I teach everybody to have a journal. That's why I wrote these journals, these companion pieces for the book. Was I wanted kids to have prompts to learn how to write. So each week they've got a prompt about who they are and writing about, have you thought about this? Why do you love your sport? Why do you want to go to college? What kind of coach makes you happy? What are some of your experiences that you want to repeat and you want this to continue on this journey? So there's 52 prompts for a year where a kid can go, okay, I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to answer this question. But what they don't realize is that these are questions that coaches are going to ask them when they get on the phone with a college coach. So I want them ready. I don't want them to go, I haven't thought about that. I don't know. I want them to get on a phone with a college coach, and the college coach goes, wow, you really do love this. You have thought about this. You have thought about why you want to go to college. You've thought about why you want to continue to play volleyball. So the journal's been a great tributary from my book where families can dive in, a 16-year-old can dive in, and they can learn how to really learn about themselves and be able to express who they are.
What I love about that the most is that I think that's one of the most important keys for these generations that are coming up with all the technology going the way it is. I think it's going to be even more important to understand who you are. It's not like it was back in the day where you got a college degree and that was sufficient. Like, what's going to make you stand out is who you are as a human. And what's going to make you stand out about who you are as a human is really how well you understand yourself. It's funny, my kid last week said he's in 5th grade, he wants to join student council.
Nice.
So they asked 3 questions, nothing crazy, not a Baines job interview or anything like that, but it is a lot of, what are your skills? What can you bring to this? So he's looking at it like, wow, student council, I want to be on that. But a lot of the conversation this past weekend was, okay, let's think about why would you want to join that? What kind of characteristics do you have? What kind of skills do you have? Asking him about himself. I'll ask him stuff all the time as we're going, being a father now is much different than my dad's generation with me. It's just, we're just more open. Yeah. We're more communicative. Like we're softer, if you will. Again, there's that word, but it is about understanding yourself. So I love the fact that serves these students your students, I believe, just from what you're telling me, in who they are today and the journey that they're doing in high school, wherever they are. I think it gets them thinking about who am I? How do I commit to what I'm doing? What do I bring to the table? It gets them prepared for that next level of interviewing and really expressing who they are. And then that's skills. That's a habit. That's like programming that stays with them so that when they're done with college and they're ready to interview, they've already done that. They know themselves. That's the trickiest part, is really identifying and expressing who you are and showing that to somebody so that they don't think you just memorized some characteristics at home, something they wanted to hear. You're genuinely expressing who you are. So I think that benefits them at every stage going forward.
Well, you're in this world. How many times have you helped somebody with their resume that they're 30, 40, 50 years old? And they have no idea what their strengths are. They have no idea what to put on that resume outside of, here's my title, here's where I worked. And I work with people. I work with teenagers and college kids and adults on their resumes as well. And it's amazing how many times I can ask 3 or 4 questions and then I'll repeat back to them their answers and go, did you know that's what you do? And they go, wow, I didn't I didn't realize the depth of my job. I didn't realize the depth of what I do every day. And I go, yeah, that's why we're going to list all this on your resume, because it's really good. You're not just an account manager. You're these 10 other things. You can do 10 other jobs besides account manager, because you have a skill set. You know how to write. You know how to have a meeting. You know how to ask really good questions. You know how to solve problems. You know how to supervise, right? So that's what's really cool, is getting a 15, 16, 17-year-old to start thinking about that now. I really hope that has a major impact on the rest of their life, on how they get a job or what kind of jobs they allow themselves to go after, and the life they can end up leading. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I do think it helps, just because I don't think, obviously, not everywhere all at once, but I don't think we really teach. It may be changing now, but I don't think when I was coming up, you really heard much about self-worth. Like, there were the cliches, hey, work hard, it'll get you by faster, it'll get you further, yada, yada. They were like scripts that they would tell you to do certain stuff, get good grades, go to a good college, get a good job. But they didn't tell you and it sounds cliche, they didn't tell you the why that's important, how it benefits you, how it builds you up. It's interesting. Obviously, in this conversation with us, it'll make sense when I'm done telling the story, but I was coaching students at my local alma mater and getting them ready for job interviews. So it was like mock interviews, mock cocktail hours and whatnot. And one of them, I took on a group and I was just talking to them, and one of them raised their hands and he's like, I haven't worked while I was in college, while I've been in college, because I don't have the time to. So I feel like I don't have anything to bring to a workplace. So what he says, like, all right, tell me a little bit about yourself. And you could tell when it's like one of the jocks, he's got like the baseball shirt on, right? I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
Big guy, great shape, right? Handsome like you, right?
Well, thank you. That's too kind.
So I'm like, tell me, well, what have you been doing, this whole time at school? Well, I'm on the baseball team. I'm like, all right, tell me tell me about that. He's like, yeah, we practice like twice a day, and we got to keep our grades up above a certain level. And I just recently got voted as the captain of the team. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, how do you not know? How do you not know all these qualities that you just explained to me that you've lived, but you don't know to put them into a value package to show somebody?
That's right.
Real world experience you have, the dedication, the work that it took to get here, the commitment that you have to your team. I don't even know about what it is that got you voted into a leadership role as the captain. And that could be a separate hour-long conversation about the values that you hold that somebody else sees in you, that they want you wearing that band or that letter, whatever it may be. So again, it's one of those things where I love the idea that you share about journaling too, because it gets people really thinking and seeing and reading, like I did with my son, with how you've spoken about. You may be living it, but you don't know it because you don't see it in front of you. You're just in reactive mode living, that you don't stop and really look at yourself. So that story that I just told just shows you just how much people aren't told or shown or guided to look at themselves and see that value, not just survive, not go through the motions, not just win the games, but understand why they're taking that path and why they've ended up where they are. It's incredible. And all it takes is one prompt from a stranger, like, who are you? What is it you've done? What is important to you? And it's not a test. It's not a quiz. It's not anything like that. It's like, who are you as a person?
Yeah. It comes back to that word, significance. It's eliminating mere chance and getting someone to understand what their value is, what their self-worth is, who's been just living their life the way they've been raised. Okay. Well, this is how I was taught. This is, I've always been this person. What value is there to that? It's getting them to understand. I talk to college presidents all the time. I talk to CEOs and business leaders all the time. And it's amazing how many times they'll talk about their desire to have more athletes a part of their organization. Because what do we know about athletes? They have to be consistent. They have to show up on time, or they're not going to be a part of the team. They have to be a great teammate. They have to be loyal. They have to fail a lot and get back up the next day and do it again. They have to learn how to collaborate. They have to learn how to deal with people who are different than them. And then they have to be in a situation where they have to deal with those different people all the time. So there's something substantial about the experience of being an athlete that leads to being an adult. And the NCAA has done study after study on this, how many times athletes are getting jobs faster and how many times athletes are continuing to be healthy well into adult world because they know how to work out. They know what they like about their body. They know what being healthy is and how that leads to a professional life and a married life and being parents. So it's, we could have podcast after podcast on this topic itself, but it's really cool when you and I get to meet with somebody who's like this baseball player. And again, that light bulb probably went off at the end of your conversation with him. He goes, wow, I am doing a lot. I do have quite a bit of value. And not only do I have value, but my coaches and my teammates see it and appreciate it. And that's why they've named me captain, is they like how I go about my business and they see me as a role model, as somebody they can count on.
Exactly. Matt, can you give me an overview of the book? You don't have to go through every chapter, but what's that kind of path that you take your reader on to get to that story you want to share with them?
Yeah, I actually start with an analogy or a story from my history as a scout and as a coach. Every chapter starts with a story that leads to that lesson. So the book is bookmarked with the idea of commitment. Chapter 1 is commitment to yourself. You know, what am I going to do? Am I going to be consistent with my work to become a better athlete? Am I going to be consistent with my work to be better at my skills and my craft? Am I going to be better in the classroom to keep my grades up so I can get into better schools and get more scholarship? So commitment is how we start the book, but commitment is how we want to end the book. Because at the end, if you follow this journey that I'm taking you on, getting committed to a school and a coach committing to you and you committing back to that coach is where we want to end up. So the in-between chapters are about how we want to do that. And it starts with chapter 2, after we talk about commitment, is self-evaluation, is learning your value. How do we do that? How do I know what my worth is to a college coach? How do I know if I can play Division I or if I'm a junior college kid or a D3 kid? And how do I grow that value? How do I make myself more attractive to a college coach? And then we talk about game planning and how to improve your academics and being more consistent with your academics and how your academics affect your ability to play in college and get recruited to play in college. And then I take them all the way through, and performance and invitation, how to invite coaches to recruit you, how to email them, how to call them, how to get their attention without having to spend $1,000 and going to their camp. And then we get to those parts that mom and dad love at the end, is how do I maximize financial aid? How do I apply for a college the right way? How do we know when we're sitting in that coach's office at the end that they're being honest with us? And how do we ask them the right questions so we can find out the truth? Are they a good fit for my daughter or for my son? So the book is stories to help them understand what other families have gone through. But then there's the lesson at the end of each chapter where it's like, this is why you're going to do this next. This is why this part of your recruiting is so important. And I preach to families, don't skip the steps. You know, the steps are where you're going to make good decisions. And I'll give your audience one stat here, and this will blow their minds. 42% of the kids that go on to college, we're talking about 250,000 kids every year, 42% that play college athletics will quit or transfer after their freshman year. 42% will quit their sport or transfer. So that's really my focus with significant recruiting, is to get you to the point where you're making really good decisions and understand what that 4 years is going to look like, so you're not giving up. You're picking a coach that you want to go through this journey with you. You're picking the right school to go this journey with you, more than just saying, well, they really like me and they're throwing a full ride at me, right? Let's pick schools that are like, wow, I love the school. If I blow out my knee and I'm not going to play ever again, I love the academics. I love the atmosphere here. I love the culture here. I love the weather. I love the idea of getting out of my room and I get to walk over there to a class and it's beautiful, So that's what's really cool for me about the book is teaching families all those things that they probably aren't going to think about without it.
Yeah, I can imagine how they may believe it may be simple and they're maybe more reactive, waiting for schools to approach them. And then, I come from a blue collar family. I was the first in my family to go to college. So I can imagine getting, okay, the first school that offers me anything, I'm going to jump on it.
Right.
So I can imagine what that's like to have a book like that, a resource like that, just kind of show you that you have more control in the whole process than you believe, at least with the steps that you can take. Matt, I'm curious, in writing it, you've painted the picture of how it's changed you from your work up until the book came out. But then in the process of writing the book and the book coming out, how has it changed you? Major evolution in you from right before the book, but anything else kind of stir up in you? Anything get elevated, energized, whatever it may be? Any major takeaways that you get from the fact that your book is out?
We talked about empathy and we talked about depression so far in this conversation. I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I've had a couple professionals over the last few months that I've talked to have pretty much said, Matt, you have ADHD, that's probably who you are. If somebody were to diagnose me, I don't sit still well. I'm not great in the classroom. That's why I stopped teaching, because I was in a box every day and it drove me wild. I wanted to be coaching. I wanted to be running around the gym and sweating, and I needed to be active. But I've always been really good at giving people their self-worth and helping them understand how much value they have. I've always been really good at that. But I've been really bad at it when I look in the mirror. I've been really bad at how I see my value. So writing this book has given me something that I didn't have and I've always wanted. I started something really profound and I finished it. I saw it all the way through the end. And if I would have asked 23-year-old Matt Rogers, if he could write a book, 200 pages, finish it from end to end, he probably would have said, I don't think I can. I don't know if I have it in me. I don't know if I can sit still long enough. So to complete that has opened up a world for me where I now know I can go to the library for 2 weeks and I can put a book together. I know I can sit down and I can write. I've had to learn where I can do that. I don't do very well in my house. I don't do very well in my office. But when I come to the library and my phone's off, my kids aren't around, my wife's office, I'm not hearing her talk. There's not a TV that I can turn on. There's not food in the kitchen. I know where I need to go to focus. And I now know that I can finish something I started. And that's opened up a world to me that's so exciting. I've just published 5 journals in the last 2 months. I'm going to publish a children's book before the holidays. So people are going to be able to buy my first children's book, So I'm going to have books done, not just a book, but I'm going to have books done within a 3-year span. And that guy, I didn't think I was capable of it. So that's really cool. I want to unlock not only that, but I want to unlock that for more people. What Kat did for me.
Yeah. I love how this underlying current in this conversation is just, and it makes sense because you've been in sports, you're a recruiter, just unlocking.
Yeah.
Unlocking potential, and I think it's mentioned and talked about to death, but when you put real stories and real experiences to it, it's magic. It really is. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then you spoke a bit to the books that are going to be coming out, but you said before you had like 12 different books that you had ideas for.
Yeah.
So aside from
outline. Yeah.
So aside from the workbooks, aside from the kids book, what other areas or focuses are those other books on?
Parents. I'm coming at parents, and I'm going to help you. I do a lot of it one-on-one. I do a lot of coaching with the kids I work with, and I work with their parents. Oftentimes mom and dad will schedule with me more than their kid. Everybody has my Calendly link, and mom will schedule with me and dad will schedule with me, and I'll hear two different sides to everything. And they're looking for that too. They're looking for their worth as a parent. They're looking for their value as a parent. They're looking for direction, how to help their kid, how to help that 16-year-old girl who's just, their emotions and their hormones and their self-doubt is just overwhelming for mom and dad. And they don't know how to just sit them down and get them to understand, hey, we're going to talk a little bit, or how to just be quiet and let that 16-year-old fill the void. So that's, once I get the children's book series done, I'm going to dive into significant parenting for athlete parents. I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but that's going to be kind of the path I'm on for the next year. Is I want to give parents something that they can sit down and read a chapter at a time and go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm already doing that, but I'm probably not doing it enough, or I'm not doing it in a way where I feel good and they feel good. I want to do the same thing for coaches eventually, and administrators at the college and high school level. There's so much that a high school athletic director used to see what they're doing. It's insane. You think I'm doing a lot? Go ask a high school athletic director what their day looks like. They're in classrooms, they're dealing with discipline. They might be the assistant principal or the assistant dean. They're dealing with 15 teams and 15 coaches that are all part-time, and assistant coaches, they don't even know their names. So over the next 5 years, I want to put out enough guidance that families and teachers and coaches can go, okay, I have a place where I can go, where Matt will teach me some things and give me some guidance and help take all those skills I have and all those things I know I'm good at and unleash me and help me get organized. My good friend, Brandon Slade, who runs this unbelievable company called Untap Learning. It's so good. If you've got a kid that's a diverse learner, and struggles in a classroom like I did, go check out Untap Learning. But Brandon has taught me about executive function skills. And I've been using executive function skills as an athletic director and a coach and a teacher for years. But I really didn't understand that that's what they were. I didn't understand how that when I set an alarm to remind me to go to a meeting or to go work out or to pick up my kids, that's an executive function skill. And so I want to dive into that a little bit more. I want to learn more about it. But yeah, that's where I'm headed. I'm headed for those moms and dads out there that have young parents like you and athletes in their house. I want to help them next after I help all these kids.
Hey, listen, we could take all the help we can get. You know what I mean?
Trust me, I'm teaching myself as I'm doing this and trying to be a better parent. I'm not perfect, so I don't want your audience to think I'm this great guy. I have many, many flaws. I'm trying to have less of them.
Yeah, and I think what's come up on this series, whether it was working with coaches or anybody working in any kind of guidance atmosphere, right? It's never that the person that's on screen or with the coach title or whatever has it all figured out. I hope we all get to the point where we don't believe that person thinks they're perfect. It's just that they've put in the time to learn. They've put in the time to have the experiences, and they're curious for more. They're focused. You know what I mean? So I don't expect, in hearing your story, what you want to share, what you want to get at, what you want to learn. I am curious to see what you put out in terms of parenting, because I think just based on your experiences as an athlete, your experience working with athletes, I think that's vital for parents. And again, even if your kid is on that track that is like all sports or not, I think that the athlete's mentality is powerful. again, the commitment, the training, the discipline, the sportsmanship. I think all of that mentality, parents today, again, this is just a different world than what we grew up in. So I think we can use all the tools that are put out there. So I appreciate that you're going to go in that route. Matt, for you, obviously this conversation is about your book, but for you, what books have stood out to you? What's inspired you? If I invited you back on here to talk about the book that's kind of stood out the most for you that wasn't your own, what would that book be, or books, whatever they might be?
Well, there's so many of them, but I love the questions you gave me ahead of time, and especially to talk about the books, because I love to read. My wife reads 4 books a week. I mean, it's crazy how much my wife reads. She was an English major too. But there's 2 books that I think that have really affected my life in 2 different ways. The first one was Sacred Hoops by Phil Jackson. And Phil's approach to coaching is the centerpiece of significance. Is he writes it about his journey through, he was like me. I was raised Catholic. He was raised heavy Christian. And then he was introduced to Zen Buddhism and Eastern religions. And all of a sudden his world changed, that, okay, maybe this isn't the law. Maybe this isn't fact. There's other ways to look at my faith of who I am, and how that transitioned him into being a coach and a leader, and helping him understand that these group of people that I'm working with, they're all different. They all see the world differently. So they're not even coming into this team, into this family that we're trying to build with the same ideas on life. They all have a different approach. So as a coach, it was so healthy for me to read that and understand that I had to approach my teams understanding the differences in values and what they valued and what was important to them and what wasn't important to them, and trying to get them all from those different directions all on the same road. That was great joy for me to read that and to understand what I was really doing and what I needed to put more effort into. So that was book 1. And book 2, I read when I was a college coach. Our vice president, Beth Triplett, if you ever want to have I'm going to recommend Beth Triplett to you, one of the best educational speakers in the world. She is so good. But she was my vice president. She was in charge of enrollment at Maryville University in my first coaching job. And Beth had all of us read Good to Great by Jim Collins. And boy, for somebody that was in teaching and education a long time, to read that from a business side of it and understand how to build teams and how to build an organization, how to build a corporation, and what they learned in that study that Jim and his group put together, and finding the right people and putting the right people on the bus, and how important that was. So for me as a basketball coach, I was like, I love that 6'7" kid. He can jump out of the gym and he can shoot the 3. My brain was going, but he's kind of disrespectful to his coach, and it doesn't look like his teammates like him very much. Maybe I'm not as excited about that kid as I should be. And Jim Collins kind of gave me some form and shape to that I needed. And I just love that idea of a business like Walgreens. Why were they so good for 25 years? Why were they so consistent in their revenue growth? And it's how they hired, the type of people they hired, how they treated those people that they hired. And then finding those locations where we're going to build our Walgreens right here on the corner, where there's huge amounts of traffic, where 10,000 people are going to drive by this every day, and everybody needs some toothpaste. Everybody needs some Q-tips. Everybody needs something for their owie or their whatever. So that was really opened my mind as a teacher and as a leader more than I expected it to.
Amazing. And then Matt, wrapping up, you've given a lot of information. Obviously, whenever I post, I'll post your website, but is there anything else that I didn't ask? Anything else you want to mention that might have been left out? Anything at all? The floor is yours, my friend.
I just wish I was as good of a podcast host as you are, man. You've got your stuff together. I'm an erratic mess on my podcast, but I do have great people on my podcast. So if you ever want to listen to some great coaches and some great athletic leaders, I have university presidents on, I have coaches, I have athletic directors, I have student athletes that really make my heart sing. So if you ever, I'm the dummy of the podcast. You're the smart one. I'm the dummy on my podcast. So if you ever want to listen to some great coaches talk, go check out Significant Coaching on every Friday. And then we do a Monday episode with those coaches where we talk just about recruiting. So if you want to hear coaches' thoughts on recruiting, you can get both of those.
Yeah, that's an incredible world that I'm not too familiar with, but I've always been curious about. Obviously, yeah, an athlete's performance on the field, on the court, whatever it may be. Obviously, as you've mentioned, as you've alluded to, that's not the only thing that matters. But it would be interesting to hear, and I'll definitely tune in. It would be interesting to hear their take on what else it is that they look for, what else it is that stands out, what other values they look at aside from the scoreboard. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fun for me. I'm becoming
you must be geeking out on all of that.
Oh gosh. I just had Susie Enquist on, the Hall of Fame coach from UCLA who spent 25 years with John Wooden, coaching side by side with John Wooden. So, it's people like that I'm like, wow, this is great. I've got the president of Otterbein College coming up. He is phenomenal. And just his approach to education and leadership. So yeah, it's really fun. I'm so blessed that I get to do what you do and talk to great people and share those conversations. And hopefully I'm not the bottom of that. Hopefully people want to listen to this, and we've done some good today.
Yeah, man, I'm speechless. Everything you brought to the table, your experiences, what you hope for others. It's what I want for the world. It's what I want for the kids, just for them to see their value, especially in a world like today. It's not just about education. It's not just about the job, but it's like, who are you as a human? So we can have fun. Obviously, we can play sports. We can learn about, job training, whatever it may be, whatever your discipline is, not just sports, but who are you in your character? Who are you in your values? Who are you in your humanity? How do you impact and help others? So, I love, taking a ride into the field of college recruiting and sports, because I think those lessons are powerful, and I appreciate that kind of discipline for my kids. So I'm thankful for all the work you're doing, because like I said, everything you do, everybody you impact, even those little kids that you see coming into the school when you're with them 2.5 hours a week, that stuff matters. It sets the pace for their self-realization. So thank you for everything you do, Matt.
Thank you for the honor of being on your show. It was great. And you got a big fan of me. I've really loved listening to your episodes. So you'll be a regular in my ears when I'm working out from here on out.
I appreciate that so much, brother. So Matt's book that he shared is Significant Recruiting, the Playbook for Prospective College Athletes. Obviously, his kind of work, I believe, impacts and touches other careers. It touches parenthood. I think it's things that we all have to be cognizant about just in who we are as characters. But again, Matt, thank you so much. And if there's anything that I might have missed, it's a long conversation. Don't have too much time, but if there's something you want to hear about that you're curious about that I might have missed, let me know, and I'll reach out to Matt, see what kind of additional wisdom, insight, guidance, anything at all I can get from him. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.